Harry Styles' Fine Line is the next album up. That's where I break down the lyrics of your favorite songs so that you can enjoy your music even more, if that was even possible. And it is, and we're going to jump right into it. But first, who is Harry Styles? Are you kidding me? You got to be kidding me. You don't know who Harry Styles is? He's one of the biggest stars in the world. So let's talk about it real quick. He was born in Redditch, Worcestershire. And of course, Worcestershire is where they make Worcestershire sauce. It's the worldwide headquarters of Worcestershire sauce. And in fact, his family worked in Worcestershire sauce factories when he was growing up. Of course, somebody of this magnitude of talent, they start out young, and he was successful at a young age, going door to door, singing for sixpence and singing for doubloons and other English money. And then he went on to X Factor, the British version of X Factor, though he was eliminated early on. And a lot of people in England are still shaking their heads today. And some of those judges have invested in time machine companies that are building time machines because they want to go back in time and change their vote. Now that he's a big international star, they realized they made a mistake. But then, as all of the fans know, when he became the giant star that he is now was when he joined One Direction, of course. Now, who was One Direction? Well, I don't know. It's only the biggest selling boy band in the history of recorded music. One Direction. In Los Angeles, they would sell out 4 nights in a row for several years. And that's more than a lot of the other giant boy bands from the past, including Bread Ties and including the Hopper Popper Kids. Those were 2 of the biggest boy bands ever. Well, One Direction easily beat them by hundreds of millions of dollars and screaming fans around the world. So let's go into his solo career. Now, of course, he had one album before this one, his self-titled album that came out in 2017, topped the charts in like 127 countries, and there's only 165 countries or so in the world. So that had to be a record. And then, of course, Fine Line, which we are reviewing the lyrics here today, came out last year. So why are we doing it now? Because it's still in the top 10 of the Billboard 200 US album charts, showing its longevity, its consistency, and the love that people have for this album. I get so many emails, so many texts, so many calls. Joe, I don't quite get all of these song lyrics. Can you break it on down? So I'm going to go track by track and explain what each song is about. I'm going to rely on my 18 years in the graduate degree program at the University of Edmonton, Alberta's School of Lyrics Appreciation and Scholarly Study to give you the insight that you may not have without that kind of background. Let's jump right into it. This is Harry Styles, track by track, Fine Line. The number 1 track on the album is Golden. This alludes to his days as a male model. Back when he was developing his music career, he was also doing a lot of modeling. Why? Because he's got the good looks that they look for in the fashion industry, not only in Britain, New York City, and around the world, Paris, runways, etc. So a lot of photo shoots are taking at what they call the golden hour. And this is where the sun is setting and where the light of the day is at its best to shoot a photo outdoors. And this song talks about the golden hour and in the early days of his career as a potential international male model. You have to focus eventually, and he chose music, and aren't we all glad that he did? The number 2 track on Fine Line is a great song that's getting amazing play on TikTok. And a lot of people think that TikTok made it a hit, but that isn't the case. It was a hit first, permeated that platform, and it's Watermelon Sugar. And he's talking about eating watermelon in the summer as a child in Worcestershire. They would put Worcestershire sauce on the watermelon slices. Now, there's a chemical reaction that happens when you do that, and you get a watermelon sugar high. And it's just some sort of chemical reaction. I don't know the science behind it, but it's very popular in his town of Redditch, Worcestershire, which is where all the Worcestershire factories are. So when they would have a summer festival or a summer picnic or a family get-together, they'd break open the watermelons, cut them up, and give the kids a slice with Worcestershire sauce all over them. And that gives you a watermelon sugar high. And that's what that song is all about. Number 3 on the track list is Adorer-you. Adorer is a French word that means bingo. And as a teen, our friend Harry worked the bingo parlor at the French embassy in London. And in the French language, they don't say bingo, they say Adorer when they get a bingo card filled out. And so Adorer-you is talking about when they would say Adorer, he'd say back to them, Adorer-you, and he'd point at the winner. And everybody would applaud in the French style, which is kind of a double beat. It's kind of... So in the English language countries, they applaud like this, but in France, they kind of go... So somebody would say, Adorer! And Harry Styles, who was pulling the balls out of the machine, the bingo machine, would say, Adorer-you! And the place would burst into applause in the French style. And of course, this was in London, and the people that worked and lived in the French embassy were, of course, French nationals. And he was able to get a job there, and it helped pay for his singing and music lessons at a pinnacle time in his development. Number 4 on the track list is Lights Up. What a fun song, because it talks about the Lights Up holiday where they would light up London Bridge for the first time every spring when the weather started to break. Now, they lived in Worcestershire, which is at one end of the London Bridge. So as a kid, he and his family would all gather around at one end of the bridge, and the countdown would start. 10, 9, 8, and it would count all the way down to 1, and the whole side, the entire town of Redditch, Worcestershire, would just scream, lights up! And then there'd be this dramatic pause, and the master of the lights would throw this huge switch, and London Bridge would light up in 1,000,001 multicolored bulbs covering the entire bridge, which would send the town of London into pandemonium. People slapping each other on the back, patting kids on the head, throwing kids in the air and catching them, throwing old people in the air and catching them, jumping on trampolines. And that is the fun that is London and the Lights Festival. And that's what that track is all about. Number 5 on the track list is Cherry. And in this song, Harry talks about when he first started to get some money in the pop game, in the music game, and he loves cars, and he especially likes Formula One race cars. And why? Because they go really, really fast. So he would buy them brand new. A lot of people would like to buy them used because that means that the engines are broken in. He said, no go for me. I want it fresh off the line. And he bought them all. These are the Formula One cars that he bought during his time in the hobby. And that includes the Mercedes AMG F1 W11 EK Power. He bought a Williams Mercedes FW43. At one point, he had a Racing Point BWT Mercedes RP20 and a Renault RS20. But the one he loved the most, the one he called Cherry, and the subject of this song was an Alfa Romeo Ferrari C39, a beautiful car that goes over 450 miles an hour, and Harry would drive it Not only would he race the car through London town, but some people claim that he would drive along the cliffs of Dover and actually go out over the cliffs into the air and ride the enormous banks of air rushing up along the cliffs. He was essentially flying and then bring the car gently back onto the road where he would continue driving 375 to 450 plus miles an hour. An amazing car and an amazing song. Number 6 on the track list is Falling. This is a really cool song because it talks about the very first time that he went bungee jumping. By this time, he was famous, and they were in an Andes Gorge, one of the deepest gorges in the world in the Andes Mountains, and they talked him into doing a bungee jump. Now, this is fascinating because there's so many paparazzi around him now at this time of his life where his fame was so huge that some of the paparazzi coordinated their bungee jump at the same time. So there's many videos on the internet, on YouTube, that people took with their phones of watching Harry Styles jump off of the landing platform into the gorge, closely followed by 40 or 50 paparazzi also on bungee cords, clicking, shooting video the whole way down. And not only that, but on the bounce on the way up. It's some of the most amazing shots of a celebrity ever. When you get over to YouTube next time, give that a peek. You're going to be amazed. And that's what Falling is all about. Number 7 on the track list is To Be So Lonely. And he talks about his dog coming to him and putting his, you know how they put their chin on your lap, like, and they look up at you and they give you that kind of sad-eyed look. And he thought, wow, to be able to do that, to be able to give that puppy dog stare just because you want a treat. And he's drawing on his emotions. The dog is acting better than some Hollywood stars. And in this case, the dog is acting better than some Hollywood movie stars. He's drawing on his emotion. He's saying, I'm lonely. I'm lonely because you are keeping me apart from the dog treats that I deserve because I do the hard work of sleeping 15 hours a day around here. And how come you're not giving me a treat? See? And so that's what he is saying in this song. If only he could pull off this acting job that is drawing, that pulls the emotions of people, then he knew he would be an international movie star as well. And who knows, he might be, with that kind of training from his dog. It still might happen. Now, number 8 on the track list is She, which talks about his nostalgic look back at the show She-Ra. Now, She-Ra was big in the 1980s, one of the biggest animated cartoons, one of the biggest animated shows on TV in the 1980s, She-Ra. But in this song, he's talking about his nostalgic look back at She-Ra and how it takes him back to the early days of Worcestershire when he was 4 or 5 years old, watching it on TV. Now, he's too young to have seen it originally, but they were playing it in reruns on ITV. That's one of the biggest broadcast networks in London. And so at that age, they would put Worcestershire in a bowl, much like Americans would put cereal. Those guys would put Worcestershire in a bowl and then sprinkle graham crackers and powdered sugar on it. And then they'd eat it with a fork. And that's how the kids were able to get through a day with the nutrition and energy that they needed. But he remembers eating that concoction while he watched She-Ra on Saturday mornings in Redditch, Worcestershire, where he was born and raised until he became an international superstar. Number 9 on the track list is Sunflower Volume 6. The songs leading up to Sunflower Volume 6 were Sunflower 1, Sunflower 2, Sunflower 3, Sunflower 4, and Sunflower 5. Now, those songs are not known to the general public, but they are known to superfans because they were emailed. The link was emailed directly to the superfans as part of a worldwide promotion. So only 50 or 60 people in London, America, Japan, in Madagascar, and also in the Congo were given links to these sunflower songs. But after the promotion was over, he promised the world that he would release the next sunflower song, Volume 6, to the general public as part of this album. So this song picks up the story of the sunflower saga and takes it to a next level. And that's what he's doing here. But he's opening it up to everybody. And we should say thank you. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Harry Styles, for including us into this unbelievable sunflower adventure. Canyon Moon is number 10 on the track list. And this is an amazing song because it talks about the mountains that are just north of his neighborhood where he was born and raised. As we mentioned, just north of there was a mountain range, one of the tallest in England. We're talking about 14,500 feet. And one of the deepest canyons was where he learned to ride a dirt bike. And I'm talking motorcycle bike, okay? So they would go dirt biking through the canyons to the late night hours. And they were young, they were dirt bikers, and we're talking like that kind of action. So they were young, they were crazy. They didn't always wear their helmet, but worst of all, they stayed out past the time they were supposed to be home. And we're talking about getting airborne and flying backwards, upside down, and then landing on two wheels. Hopefully you don't wipe out. But in that spin, in that turn, they would see the moon, the canyon moon. So this song talks about those carefree days of his youth where they were breaking their curfew, getting into trouble, riding motorcycles upside down and seeing that canyon moon and laughing their head off with joy and fun and glee and good times. Number 11 on the track list is Treat People with Kindness. Now, this talks about, believe it or not, a racehorse called Treat People with Kindness that the band members, the group members, the singers, the other members of One Direction all purchased together with Harry once they started to make it big. Now, why? Because the boys love to gamble. They love to gamble on the horse races. They love to gamble at the casino. They love to play poker when they go out on the road with hundreds of thousands of dollars, trading from one member of the group to another, depending on who was hot, who had the hot hand, and Harry was often at the top of the heap with the poker winnings. So they bought a horse called Treat People with Kindness. Now, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the horse race announcers were not happy with this name because it took too long to get the name out during the horse race broadcast. It'd be something like, and around the final turn they come. It's Mystify in the lead, as followed behind by Conqueror. And in third place, it's Treat People with Kindness. Treat people with kindness. See, it was too awkward for them to get it out in a smooth manner. They would actually complain to the Horse Race Commission in London that it took too long to say the name, and they got a clause put in their contracts that they could just say kindness. So that's why when you hear the broadcasts of their horse during the horse races, they'll just use the shortened version, kindness. Really fascinating. And finally, number 12 on the track list is Fine Line. Now, guys, this is something that I can talk about specifically because he goes through the pain and terror and embarrassment of his receding male pattern baldness hairline. Now, as you can see, this is a torment. This is a wall of fear that I've already climbed over because I'm older. I'm 76 years old. I'm just glad that I have any hair on my head at all. But as you can see, I went through the battle. I pulled my sword out at a young age and I battled through the fear and the embarrassment and the humiliation of being 16 years old. I mean, this has been my hairline since I was 16. And I remember people in my homeroom yelling across the room, Hey, who's going to the game tonight? Not you, Baldy. Not you, receding, right? Not you, male pattern baldness. And some of the kids called me MPB, male pattern baldness. So I know what it's like to go through it. He talks about that emotional turmoil. And frankly, as a fan, it touched my heart that he was communicating, and it felt like he was communicating with me directly about this painful subject. And for that, I applaud him, both the English style and the French style. That's how they applaud in France, guys, as we detailed earlier in this analysis of such a great album, Fine Line, by one of the biggest stars in the game right now, Harry Styles. I went track by track where I broke down the lyrics and explained what the context of each song was so that you can enjoy your music even more. Guys, that's all I have for now. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and tell your friends. We're having so much fun around here.